I got to tell you, and I want to say this, and I want to be very clear. It's a very important thing about Senator Marco Rubio, and that is that he keeps his promise. He told me once, I guess it was a couple of years ago, if I ever need him on the show, I should just call him, and he'll be here. And again, I'm happy to welcome Senator Marco Rubio to the Rich Stevens Show. Senator, thank you for being here today.
No, thanks for having me on.
How are you?
I'm good. Working hard.
Listen, I want to first of all tell you that I thought the CNN so-called town hall, fake news, whatever that really was, I think you did a great job that night considering what was thrown at you, and it took a lot to stand there and take it.
Well, it's my job, number one. I represent people in Florida, including people that may not agree with me on an issue, and in that particular case, it was a grieving community and obviously students that were impacted by this, but families that had lost children. And so, I don't regret going for a second, and, I continue to remain open to talking to people that disagree with me. I'm always willing to learn, and if new information emerges, draft an opinion different from what I've had in the past. But I also feel strongly about things, and I'm prepared to explain those things and justify them. And I was hopeful that it would be kind of a forum where we would be able to kind of craft a path forward, but it wasn't the way it was produced, and it was still too raw. But hopefully we'll turn the corner here soon and kind of work on the things that we can agree on, and respectfully debate the things that we don't.
Yeah, I have to ask you, and I know I've heard you talk about this, but I want to ask you again: how did so many plans that were put in place fail with this shooter?
Well, that's what I've been focused on, 100% almost initially, because I wanted to learn as much as I could about how this happened. And every day there was a new revelation about how this guy was a dangerous guy and everybody knew it and nobody did anything about it. And how did we get to that point? And I think there are three things to remember. The first is these different organizations don't talk to each other. I remain convinced, I hope this is the case, that if there was a table somewhere where the sheriff was sitting and DCF was sitting and the FBI was sitting there and the school district was sitting there and everybody compared their own notes with each other about this killer, they all would have reached the same conclusion. But that kind of collaboration doesn't exist. Number two, I think there's a general policy in this country, which I generally agree with, that we don't want to be putting kids in jail for wrongdoing in school. But I think this one went a little bit further than that, and we probably should have been arrested for making death threats online. I think you take it together with all these other things. So that's probably the second part of it. And I think the third is, we have a background check system that everybody keeps talking about background checks, but the system itself has serious flaws. 30-something states don't fully report into the system. The Air Force didn't report a domestic violence conviction into the system, and then a guy shows up in Texas and shoots up a church. So that part has to be fixed as well. In this case, it may not have applied because he hadn't been arrested, but even if he had been, it may have taken time for that to get on the system. So there's a lot of work to do to make sure this doesn't happen again. But I'm in the killer prevention mode, and in the killer control mode, and then we want to make sure we find these people and stop them before they do anything.
Yeah. Now, I heard you on the Senate floor last week outline your plan. Can we talk more about the specifics of that? I know you just touched on some of them, but more specifically, or actually, I also wanted to find out, the FBI admitted that they failed when they had this tip on January 5th. Shouldn't there be, at this point, a federal investigation into two things? One, how did it fall through? And I know that's what you're working on. And two, there's been a lot that went on that day during the shooting with police officers not going in, given a stand-down order. And from what I'm told from very reliable sources, people that were there, first responders, that they were told not to go in because they were waiting for the BSO deputies with the body cameras first before they went in, which is ludicrous.
Well, yeah, and I don't know that far on that case. There is a federal investigation. It begins with the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator Grassley announced it on the 15th, which is a couple weeks away, I guess. They're going to be having a hearing, and we'll see who he's calling in, and that's one of the things they're going to have to look at. And by the way, not just this threat, but are there other threats that were made to the FBI that they have not forwarded? Because if maybe they need to be forwarding those now for sure. So that's going to be the topic of conversation. That's going to be what that hearing is about, and I expect the Senate Judiciary Committee and Senator Grassley to hold them some real accountability hearings and investigation on that.
Yeah, but it's very difficult many times when you want to hold these people's feet to the fire that you don't get support from the other side, and that causes problems. Am I right with that?
Yeah, I mean, the committee's got subpoena power. They wanted to use it to get a hold of things, and so, yeah, I mean, obviously that can always be the case, but, the chairman's got a lot of power and the ability to really focus a lot on this and bring a lot of resources to forcing these agencies to produce information, and that's what I anticipate he's going to do. I really do.
Right now, do you believe that any of our students and teachers are any safer than they were 2 weeks ago?
I would hope they are, simply because of awareness. I would think that right now just about any threat or anyone who's out there making crazy claims online or Instagram, if you're a student out there and you're putting stuff up like this guy was putting up, my sense is people would probably react to it a lot faster than they were a couple weeks ago, and we wish this wouldn't have taken this tragedy to bring us there. My concern is long-term, as this thing kind of fades in memory and time goes on, people kind of fall back into their old ways. And when you know someone or you're around someone, you never believe or you don't want to believe that they're capable of this kind of thing, especially if they're a member of your family or somebody you're close to. But we're kind of in a zero-tolerance era right now where we really just can't be taking that chance. These things are happening too often.
We're talking to Senator Marco Rubio. A lot of people want the videos released from the school to show what the first responders did going in. And there's also some stories that the shooter was wearing body armor and a gas mask. I talked to the Broward sheriff last week, and he claims that was not true at all. Why are we hearing so many different stories? And wouldn't it be easier to release the videotape so we can see firsthand exactly who and what was going on?
Well, I think you will. I mean, the media's fighting for it, and I think it'll be subpoenaed already by the Florida House of Representatives. My sense is that the Senate Judiciary Committee may do the same at some point to get their hands on these videos of the outside. Now, there are videos inside of the building, and those, I think, out of respect for the families, number one, they're evidence in a trial, so obviously that'll be handled a little bit different. And I don't know, again, if that's the part where I kind of feel a little different about putting out on, for everyone to see a video of a guy walking down the hallway killing people out of sensitivity to the families. But the outside stuff and the body cam stuff of the law enforcement is the one that the media is suing for right now, and I think they're going to get it, and I think those things are going to be there's no way the Broward Sheriff's Office can continue to deny those. They're one way or the other, those things are going to be turned over.
But as far as the video inside, I understand with respect to the families, but do you think that releasing that and obviously blocking out the students that were shot, but to just see this man might open some eyes to people that are against certain things when it comes to what happened in this situation? Would that change?
Yeah, I know. And I'm always in favor of disclosure, and maybe there's a way to do it that you're describing it, something like that doesn't necessarily, cause additional pain to families and others. There's the other thing that comes with it, by the way, and is a lot of these shooters, 99.9% of us here in this country would view that video in horror. But some small but significant number of lunatics would view that video as a source of inspiration. We know these things have copycat elements to it, so that's a part of it. I mean, this guy happened to be alive, but most of these guys take their lives, but they want to go down in infamy, and they want to be famous, and they learn from each other. That's the one common thread in a lot of these mass shootings, is these guys are learning from the previous instance and taking inspiration from it. So that's why I never say the killer's name. I just refuse to make him a household name.
Yeah, I'm with you. We're talking to Senator Marco Rubio. In this case, it was very different because this killer did not take his own life, and he was out before he had a chance to get shot. Yeah. He's still alive. We don't know. I do know he's cooperating somewhat, but I don't know if we'll ever know why he did this or not. But the things that we can learn from this particular shooting, where the school did active shooter training, and they had a fire drill earlier in that morning, so a lot of these kids thought that it was another drill and didn't take it as seriously. I remember when I was a kid growing up in the Bronx, we used to have the fallout drills, where everybody would line up and then go under your desk and all that stuff. So how can they distinguish the difference between something that's real and something that's fake, other than hearing the bullet shots? And even that, some people said they thought it was firecrackers.
Yeah, and obviously that's tough with a drill on virtually anything. But at the end of the day, I mean, those drills are made to make things safer, and I do think that you could argue, and you look in hindsight, that there, because of some of these policies, because doors were locked and people sheltered and things of this nature, that there are some people alive today that may not have been, had they not had that preparation. If everybody had kind of rushed out into the hallway, it would have been just an even bigger bloodbath. So I do think you can look at some of that training and say it was helpful. That I've been able to speak and meet with a couple of the teachers that were actually on those floors and confronted this guy. I mean, were there when this was going on, and a lot of the things they did saved lives, in terms of following the protocol. But in the end, you got a lunatic with a rifle inside of a closed space like that, and bullets come through walls and things of this nature, and it's just a tough deal all the way around. But the best way to address these things, security is a multi-layered thing. We haven't had another 9/11 using an airplane, and part of it you could say is TSA and some of the things we do at airports, but a lot of it is on the front end. We have a FBI and intelligence agencies are constantly out there trying to find these guys and before they can act. And the same is true here. I mean, one of the first bills I'm filing, it's the Stop School Violence Act. It is all about identifying and stopping a potential killer before they act, before they actually take the action. That is the best of all measures. You got to do them all, but that one is really the one that would have the biggest impact. Identify these people, because they're always showing signs. It's not like one day to the next, right? For a couple of years, these people are doing things that lead you to believe that they could be a danger to others or to themselves.
Now, this bill that you're talking about, is this the bill you're introducing tomorrow?
So Senator Hatch will be the lead, and I'm joining him on it, and it's one that has a House companion as well, with Congressman Rutherford and Congressman Deutsch is on that one too. And so it's called the Stop School Violence Act, and what it provides is up to $100 million a year for DOJ grants to the states to set up prevention task force models. They work. Utah does it. The L.A. School District does it. They know who their former students and current students who could be a threat to schools and gatherings of young people, who they are. They know who these people potentially are. They're constantly identifying them, and they're getting out ahead of them. I mean, they're institutionalizing them. They're putting hands on them before these people can ever take action. And that's the right way to approach this. It was innovated by Sandy Hook Promise, the parents after Sandy Hook. So that's the first. The second is a gun violence restraining order, which has due process, but if what happens when you identify one of these people, you can go to court. You got to prove it. Okay, you can't just walk in there and say, "Well, I think he might be." You got to prove stuff like, here's the Instagram pictures, here's the stuff he's been saying to people, and then you get a court order, and you can stop these people from buying a gun. And then the third one is the Fix NICS bill that combines with Lie and Try, which is the one that will be filed today that Senator Toomey and Senator Coons are doing. They're going to be, and I'm going to be co-sponsoring that with them. And that one is about, we're not prosecuting criminals. They go in, someone goes in, tries to buy a gun, they fail the background check, they walk out, nothing happens. So we know that there are people out there who are not supposed to have guns because they've been convicted of a felony. They still try to buy one, and nothing ever happens. And no one ever follows up. Well, why is that? Why is a convicted felon trying to buy a gun? Why did he try to get away with this? We're not prosecuting those things. We're not even investigating it. And this fixes that. And this requires the FBI to report it immediately. Hey, so-and-so, convicted felon, tried to buy a gun, failed the background check. Shouldn't we figure out what's going on with this guy and why he's trying to do it? So we got to do a lot of different things. But those are the ones we're really putting a lot of energy on at the front end.
What kind of time frame are we looking at here?
Well, that's a great question, and I really think it depends what's going to happen with all this. And there's people out there that want to have a gun debate. And look, that debate existed before Parkland, and it's a debate that the country will continue to have. We have elections over it. We have people that feel very strongly about it. I'm a big supporter of the Second Amendment. I don't want guys like this guy to have guns, but I believe Americans have a constitutional right to protect themselves and to use guns also for hunting and recreation. So I'm all for, the Second Amendment, but we're going to have that debate. But here's the bigger question, and that is, what about the things we agree on? Are we going to hold those things hostage until we have the gun debate, or can we agree on the things that we agree on, pass those things first, and then move on and have that debate? I'm willing to have that debate. But that debate was around and has been around before this and will be around after it, too. I mean, we're going to continue to have those conversations in this country, but we got to do these things that we agree on first. Why would we wait? Because every day counts. We don't know when the next madman's going to try to strike, and we got to, and it might not be a gun. It might be a bomb or a truck running down a sidewalk. Don't we want to find these people before they do it?
Well, one of the things in your plan is to create a school threat assessment and crisis intervention teams. Mm-hmm. Didn't we have, or at least on a local level, a threat assessment plan in place that obviously failed here. So how would yours be different?
Well, it would it's collaborative. It's more than just isolated into the school system. And so in this particular case, there was no forum that was effective anyway, in which everybody was talking to each other. And by the way, it's not just about Broward. It's about every other 66 of the other school boards in this state and all across the country. And learn from this and create the funding at the Department of Justice to help school districts and communities start these sorts of things. Because the one thing that all these shootings have in common is the shooter was doing things well before the atrocity that was indicating to people we have a problem here. And so you got to be able to compare notes. So if the sheriff comes and says we've had 40-something calls to this guy's house, and the school says we've had to kick him out for fights and for this and for that, and the FBI says, well, by the way, we got a call on our tip line about this guy, all of a sudden you put all that together and you realize this is not some isolated thing. This is a real serious problem. That forum did not exist. It was clear no one knew about the FBI call. It is not clear that the school district knew about how many times the sheriff had been called, and it's not clear the sheriff knew about what a huge problem he was at the school. And they all kind of knew what they knew about him, but they didn't know what other people knew about him. You've got to have a place where all of that is put together, and experts, not politicians, not people running for election, not bureaucrats who have a cultural affinity, meaning a political cultural affinity towards not arresting people that are going to school and things of that nature, but experts look at all those factors and say, this thing's got the markings of a school shooter or of someone who's going to take their own life or someone that's going to do something really bad. We got to jump on it.
Yeah, after every one of these situations, everybody always says, we knew it was him. There were even students that say when the shooting was happening, they were saying, it's Nick, it's got to be Nick.
Yeah, no, I've talked to multiple students. Last Thursday, I saw two of them that came up with their dad. They were up there talking about school safety, and they both said it. They said, listen, we were in another building. We knew right away. As soon as this thing happened, and they said it was a former student, everybody knew who it was. We didn't even have to wait for the news to say the name. So when you've got something like that, where everybody knew who it was, and then you add to it the fact that there was a specific threat called into the Broward sheriff, a specific threat called into the FBI, repeated visits to his home, a DCF analysis, school expulsion for violence, fighting, online threats of murdering someone that was a felony in the state of Florida, and you ask yourself not just how did this guy get 10 guns, but how did no one pull this guy in, and before he got too far on this stuff.
So hopefully you'll get your stuff passed, and it'll be quickly, and action will be taken, so we don't have to have this conversation again, and we can talk about other things which are, as important, but just move quickly. And that's my only fear that,
We can all agree, no matter where you are on the gun debate, if all of us can agree that our schools need to be safe and dangerous people like this guy should not have guns and should not be running loose, if we can all agree on that, then let's all agree that that's step one. Let's do that first. And after we've done that, then we can go our separate ways and have the debate about the other stuff. I'm not telling you let's not talk about the other stuff because that's legitimate debate. We're going to continue to have it. I'm just saying don't hold up the stuff that we already agree on, because we don't know when the next one's going to happen. We don't know if right now somewhere in Florida or America there's a guy just like this who's waiting to act today or tomorrow, and it was Parkland a couple weeks ago. It could be anywhere a couple weeks from now. We don't have the luxury of time. We got to move as quickly as possible.
Finally, I just want to ask you, the people here in South Florida that are listening to you right now, is there anything that we can do to help?
I think it's important for everybody to let their elected representatives know, no matter where you are on the gun debate, that it is important for us to act on the things we agree on. I think it's important for everyone to push to get these bills passed in Tallahassee that are up there, and then to turn your attention to the federal level and call your congressman and call Senator Nelson and call my office and everybody else and just say, look, we are for or against gun control, whatever your views are, but right now we all agree we want our schools to be safe. We want our kids to be safe. We never want to have another school shooting. So let's pass the things that we all agree on first. Let's not hold those things up. And once we've passed that, and it could happen quickly, then we'll all go our separate ways and have our broader debate about the other issues, hopefully in a respectful way. But let's do this first, because we agree on this part first. It makes no sense to hold this up until the other stuff gets done. And if we can do that, we can get something done. If we fall into the hands of the political people who say, let's not do anything so we can have an election and beat them up for having done nothing, or some of the other stuff that's happening, then I fear nothing will happen. And that's not an acceptable outcome, and it's one that would be a tremendous disservice to the memory of these 17 human beings who lost their lives, and their families whose lives have been shattered as a result of this terrible tragedy.
Senator Marco Rubio, I couldn't agree with you more. I hope and pray that this gets done as quickly as you're saying it should get done. Yep. And I always thank you for your time, and I know it's valuable, your time, to be here with us on the Rich Stevens Show today.
So I'll be back on with you again, and we'll keep talking about this.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too.
All right, bye-bye. That's Senator Marco Rubio.